Cancorla. I think we've always been aware of the impact and power of the concentration of media by certain companies. You'll remember, Cancorla, of course, in 1997, when we went out on that fateful election day and the Irish Independent had that headline, Payback Time, which was directed against the outgoing Fine Gael and Labour Party. And indeed, in the run-up to 2007, we saw the rapprochement between Taoiseach Ahern and the independent group of newspapers, which also, I think, provided a fortunate background to his going to sleep as a defeated Taoiseach and waking up as continuing Taoiseach of the country in that particular election. And we've seen the same type of thing, I think, MEP Lynn Boylan. In her report, she references the Media Reform Coalition report in the UK, which shows a clear concentration of with three newspaper groups controlling 71% of the newspapers that are bought in the UK. And I remember in particular 1992 election, where the Sunday Times, the Times Group, their famous headline was "Hold your nose and vote Tory," after 18 disgraceful years of a reactionary Conservative government. And of course, with the efforts of Mr Blair and his triangulation policies or strategy, the News International Group then changed course in the run-up to 1997 and began to support the Blairite approach. But unfortunately, a few years later, or fortunately, they changed back their tack, and we saw in the last two elections, of course, relentless assaults on the UK Labour Party. We've also reflected, of course, in Britain on the again relentless campaign by the cartel, by the Conservative newspaper cartel and media platforms against the European Union, with all kinds of spurious scares and claims, which did form the backdrop undoubtedly to the worries of the British people in relation to the developments in Europe. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak briefly on this important bill, the Media Ownership Bill of 2017. I want to warmly congratulate Deputy Murphy and Deputy Shortall and the Social Democrats for the work they've done on it and for bringing it before us today. And I know that indeed that Deputy Murphy, she's had a long interest in the whole question of media concentration, long before the site serve issue arose in this House. The bill intends, of course, to protect the plurality of the Irish media landscape, which is, and I know you'll agree, Cancorla, the critical foundation stone for a democratic society. And it will allow, obviously, for the Competition Protection Act 2014 amendment by amending it to be applied retrospectively. And I think the Social Democrat bill is trying to ensure that the 20% public interest test, which applies to any media merger, could be applied retrospectively to any individual with more than 20% interest in media platforms. So the current legislation, and we heard, I was reading the Minister's speech here at the end, where he basically says, I'm not sure what he's doing here, or is he going to do anything? It is quite weak in this territory. The Competition Act 2002, the Broadcasting Act 2009, the Competition Consumer Protection Act 2014 don't seem to be performing properly when one looks at the BAI report on ownership and control of media businesses in Ireland for 2012-2014 and the subsequent excellent report by MEP Lynn Boylan, the concentration of media ownership in Ireland, which clearly showed we were on a scale, we're not exactly Russia or Turkey or Saudi Arabia, but we are definitely on a scale where there is huge concentration. And it also references, of course, the report in the UK which showed 71% control. Of course, as other speakers have said, the media landscape is changing dramatically, and there has been an incredible change in how people are accessing their daily news. Hard copy newspapers effectively are dying as more and more of us read freely online. And of course, we've seen that the millennium generation don't seem to buy newspapers very much. They access the news on maybe free sites or the articles you're allowed to read on the papers that are trying to migrate onto websites. So we've on online news sites such as Google, Yahoo, the newspapers, our newspapers, Journal, Breaking News, or the Huffington Post, Mediapart in France, I suppose, in France, they're being used by people and accessed through people's smartphones in their daily commutes, and the whole newspaper culture would effectively seem to be going. And of course, some sites now require subscription, but as I've said, it's very difficult to get particularly the generation that hasn't been used to buying and reading newspapers to actually begin to do that now. Of course, the current groups do have a great advantage because in trying to migrate from the hard copy newspaper to the digital platform, they have a huge head start on any of the rest of us who might decide to establish an online news site, Concordia. But even having said all of that about the changes, media ownership is still very concentrated. Indeed, Irish media has always been very concentrated in the past. As other speakers have said, we have the same chorus every year on budget policy, with most articles advocating for cuts in spending or stay the fiscal course, or in support of the blanket bank guarantee or whatever in the past. Of course, historically, the Irish Independent Group, they were bitterly opposed to Irish independence, and the Irish Times represented the old unionist ruling class. And indeed, Eamon de Valera and his colleagues had to try to establish their own newspaper platform, which was the Irish Press. And like many other people, I greatly regretted the demise of the Irish Press when it happened, because we lost a fourth essential voice, I think, in that. And of course, local radio has been a big success, as many people have said here, but efforts, I think, to launch serious competition to RT TV and radio on a national level have been poor enough, I think, with TV3 and UTV. So we've seen the continuous growth, I think, of the power of independent news and media, which brings us to the main purpose of today's bill, and I quote, to protect both diversity of ownership and control of media business in the state and the plurality of the media. And I think, obviously, it's not a healthy situation where the principles of one group can have a huge control of the hard copy newspaper industry, and at the same time a swathe of radio news sites. As I referenced, I think European Deputy Lynn Boylan's report, which gave us some valuable figures both here and in the UK, and as I said, it does refer to us scoring 0.7 on a scale of 0 to 1, where 1 is total concentration of media power. As I said, we've seen in the past, how people spoke with one voice. You might remember me, Can, trying to raise the issue of, the pyrite problems, the problems with building, relentlessly in this House. And it was a long time before the two big newspaper groups, Independent and Irish Times, took it up. And it has to be said that for years and years, and they're back at it again, they have these huge property supplements with nice, cosy write-ups about what developers' plans are and so on. And that's in one section, and that's funding the whole newspaper. And on the other hand, you've got editorial written by different writers. But some of those writers, the famous journalists such as Stephen Collins or Pat Leahy or John Downing, I've never seen them doing articles about the influence of the property industry and on the newspapers and on what happened to our country in 2009. So I want to warmly support the Social Democratic bill.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Now,